Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be talking about Donald Trump's approval rating, and specifically we'll discuss the fact that it's gone down a fair amount in the past few weeks. I'm here to tell you what that means, what that doesn't mean, and what it really, or I should say what the implications of Trump's approval rating are going to be for our elections, both this year and, more importantly, and more broadly in 2026. So, before we get into talking about how it breaks down by state, obviously we're going to focus on the swing states and states that have elections in the next year. We have to kind of think a little bit about what approval ratings can tell us and what they cannot tell us. So first of all, I think that there are basically two broad types of public polling, at least within American elections, that can tell us relevant information about any election or any sort of political development. The first is favorability polling, which is either job approval, or do you approve of the president's job performance? It can also be favorability polls directly, which are just, do you have a favorable opinion of X candidate? Do you view Kamala Harris favorably? Do you view JD Vance favorably? And then the other type of polling, which is I think actually more broad, of course, is horse race polling, where you have a Democratic candidate, you have a Republican candidate, and you ask people who they're going to vote for or who they would hypothetically vote for. And so both those types of polling are broadly informative and they are good. Polls can be very inaccurate, but I think that the more polls you have, the better. But the interesting thing that people often forget about just in general, the value of approval rating polls is that they're often predictive more so than they are snapshots, whereas horse race polls are snapshots in time. It's fielded maybe 3 days and you get a sample of 1,500 voters, right? I think approval polls are actually kind of directionally correct in the sense that they will tell you where the country might be at in 2 months or in 3 months, but I don't think they tell you where you are in the present moment. And so that makes them limited in their ability to predict elections. And so the first thing that we have to to predict elections that are happening this week, right? And so the reason I think that, and this is kind of a broad theory of mine, obviously I know people who disagree with me on this, but I think that when you look at approval polls, you have to think about the direction that they're trending in. And so, if we look at this graph that was put together by G. Elliott Morris, who's a former 538 guy. By the way, very sad 538's no longer a thing. It's really disappointing. But taking a look at this approval poll, you can broadly see the trend. Really, since mid-February, Trump has been net approved of, and really in April was a really bad month for him. He went from having a 46% approval rating down to the low 40s. He's there today. He's at 43%. And so I don't think that say you went to April 27th, he was 53% unfavorable and 43% favorable. I don't think that on that exact day that was exact approval rating. And the reason I think that is because when you are trending a certain way, you have momentum. Donald Trump might have had positive momentum at one point. He might have had negative momentum at one point. And whichever way the momentum is going is the people who are aligned with that type of momentum. So for Trump, if he's gaining approval rating, those are Republicans that are kind of behind the momentum. And if he's losing, popularity, that's kind of something more in the direction of the Democrats, right? When you have momentum in politics, the people that are on the side of the momentum are more likely to respond to polls. It's called response bias. And so a lot of Republicans, potentially correctly in 2024, when Kamala Harris surged in the immediate aftermath of taking over for Biden at the helm for the Democrats, a lot of Republicans were arguing that that was happened, that her surge was kind of created and strengthened by response bias, and that it wasn't as large as it might have seemed. And that might have been correct in retrospect. But say Trump does something that's broadly unpopular and Democrats are really angry about it and Republicans are kind of ooh, I'm not sure about this. Democrats start to respond to polls at slightly higher numbers, and that can kind of boost, and it can kind of hurt Trump a little more than his reality. So when we talk about how these approval polls are predictive, they show the momentum right now. And I think the momentum here is towards Trump being less popular, which means Democrats might be more angry with him than Republicans are happy with him, right? And so that's why they can tell you where you're going. And this has been the case in a ton of recent political, like, just I guess for a ton of recent politicians, Joe Biden did not get like at all good approval polls in the latter half of 2021 and basically for the entirety of 2022. He had some bounce backs in early 2023, and then later in 2023, especially after the developments in Israel and Palestine, it went way down for him. And those polls were even if even in May of 2022 or like December of 2023, those approval polls, the trend was clear, and it kind of foretold the horse race polling later down the line, which showed surprisingly bad results for Biden, even against Donald Trump, who was also never really that popular. And so that's my kind of long way of saying, look, approval polls are great. They can show us trends. They can show us who, whether a politician is in the right direction or the wrong direction, but they can't, I don't think, tell us a great story or a very accurate story, but what would happen if, like, say there was an election tomorrow, if Donald Trump ran for re-election literally on July 21st today, right? So that's kind of the value of it, and that's the important thing to think about. Now, if we look at his map here, and this is a model, by the way, that G. Elliott Morris made, right? And this isn't state by state polling. It's taking the estimates from from national polling and it applies them to a statewide model here. And what you'll see, it's not surprising, right? Trump is most unpopular. The more orange the state, the more unpopular he is. He's most unpopular in Maryland, Vermont, Massachusetts, and California. Okay. And he's most popular in Wyoming, in West Virginia, and Oklahoma. Okay. But if you look at his polling in the swing states, you'll notice that it's pretty bad, right? He's barely above water in Texas and Florida. He's not doing that great in, or he's actually barely up in Iowa. He's actually down in Ohio, which is interesting. He's at -1 in Ohio. And then if you look at the big 7 swing states, which he won all of in 2024, we'll go through this geographically. He's down 8 in Nevada, down 7 in Arizona, down 10 in Georgia, down 9 in North Carolina, down 11 in Pennsylvania, down 10 in Michigan, and down 11 in Wisconsin. So it's bad for him across the board, but he's doing, like, relative to how he did, in the Electoral College, he's doing especially poorly in the Rust Belt. It looks like he's lost a little bit of ground, or I should say a fair bit of ground in Nevada and Arizona, but he's double digits underwater in the 3 Rust Belt states, and he's actually somehow underwater in Ohio, which he won by 11 points last year. And this is a state that he's won all 3 times, right? Michigan, maybe not. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, maybe not. But Ohio, he's 3 for 3 there. That's, Ohio has been a red state since Trump has basically been on the political scene, and he's down there. Now, this is a model. This isn't official statewide polling saying we only talk to people in Ohio, but it's very interesting, certainly, because it does reveal a broader trend, which is that Trump has not had a great past 3 months. And I think since April, since he had a pretty negative news cycle on the Liberation Day stuff with the tariffs, I think it's been pretty bad for him. It's kind of a breaking point here. Like, if you look on, the end of March, he was 50% disapproved, 46% approved. And then, you go to the end of April, he's down to 43% approved and 53% disapproved. And, he clawed back a little bit. He's under 45% at the beginning of June. And then now he's back down to less than 43%. And his disapproval is getting very close to 54%. It looked like it peaked on June 24th, but it's still within 0.3% or 0.4% of that. So that is a big problem for him. And again, I'm not using this to, like, say that it's going to be worse necessarily for him in the swing states. I don't think it's going to, like, result in, like, a huge blue wave. Or maybe there will be a big blue wave, but I don't think that Trump's approval rating is the only, like, compelling thing with regards to that. But this is what's interesting about Trump's approval rating, is that he's getting closer and closer to his 2020 or to his 2017 numbers. And in Trump's first term, he was not popular, and the Republicans lost the House, and Trump was the first president since George H.W. Bush to lose re-election. Now, to be fair to Trump, Democrats lost the White House after 1 term last year, so I think you can argue that America has been in a pretty anti-incumbent mood since then. But nevertheless, he's up. He's down 11 points. He was down 15. So he's still like 4 points more popular than he was at this point in 2017. That's not great. In 2017, Trump, I don't think was that helpful for Republicans, obviously, because in 2018, Republicans lost the House popular vote by nearly 9%. And he's also lagging notably. He's lagging behind Joe Biden, who Joe Biden, you know, to be fair, this is just over the course of their first 12 months, I believe. But like Joe Biden, really was not popular either. And Biden, at a certain point, as you can see kind of like at the end of this graph, Biden would eventually become less popular than Trump 1.0. So I don't want to single out Trump here because Trump 1.0, Biden, and Trump 2.0, they have all been unpopular presidents. It's just that Biden is more popular than the Trumps at this point. And actually, if you compare apples to apples at this point in Biden's term, he was still plus 10, plus 11 points. So that's a notable thing to consider. But overall, it's just, to me, like, approval polls are really about who has momentum, and it's important, but it's also not an indicator of what would happen, I think, if an election were held tomorrow or even if it were held next week, right? We have to consider that a lot of these polls are driven by enthusiasm, and it's good for Democrats and I guess bad for Trump as a result of that. That Trump, the voters are reacting in a very strong negative manner to his term for whatever reason. But I think you have to really remember that Democrats in 2022 kind of broke the streak of being unpopular and holding up in the midterms, right? Joe Biden was not popular at all on election day 2022. He had a 44% approval rate, I think a 43% approval rating per exit polling, which is lower than which was, I think, actually a point lower than Trump's approval rating on election day 2018, mind you. And Democrats fared well that year. So, I think my takeaway would be that the Republicans shouldn't be happy that their president isn't very popular right now, and that I think it's been disappointing for Trump. Certainly, I thought after the election that he had a chance to really kind of be more popular, to maybe have a 48 or 49% approval rating. But I think that just at this point in time, it doesn't seem to me as though that's going to happen. And I think he might be on a dangerous path in the sense that he's heading back to 2017 numbers, which are bad for the GOP. But we'll see. We'll see if that continues. We'll see where the trends go, because that's really all these data. That's the thing that these data points are most valuable for. So let me know what you think. Tell me if you approve or disapprove of President Trump at this point in time, and I will see you all in the next video.